Welcome one and all to the show. This is the Frankly Fantasy Football Podcast, Fantasy Football for the Average Joe. We are your hosts, Frankie and Johnny. How you doing, Frankie?
I'm doing good, man. You know, last week it was a bit crazy. I was down and out, man. I spent the Thanksgiving in the urgent care with some shit, and now I'm finally creeping out, man. Feeling good and back at it. How about you?
So, after all of that, what would you say you're thankful for now?
Health. Thankful for health. God, do you take that for granted on a day-to-day basis? And Lord, man, thankful for that. And, you know, thankful for my fantasy teams pulling it out and doing well.
Yeah. Well, you're thankful for health for your fantasy team as well. My God, guys are dropping like flies. This is not the time of year you want injuries on your fantasy team. And we're going to get to that a little bit in the news here, man. Thanksgiving good other than spending the whole thing in the emergency room?
Dude, it was honestly, it was really great. You know, just being able to spend time with the kids and the wife. And yeah, it wasn't the sexiest of times by any means, but it was just great, man. Having not to worry about work and just doing our thing and watching good football all goddamn weekend. It was awesome, man. How about you? How was the family?
First of all, I mean, sexy and Thanksgiving. I've never equated Thanksgiving dinner and Thanksgiving Day as being sexy. So
just base that fucking thing and just base that turkey. What's that? You guys ever see the what is it, Scary Movie 2 where you like, I'm gonna base the turkey, I'm gonna grab it, I'm gonna stuff it with all the giblets. You guys ever see that? It's fucking hilarious. If you haven't, you need to. It's great.
That's amazing. I had fun the past couple of days, though. I did go to I'm sporting my Colts gear here. I went to the Monday Night Football game with the Colts and the Steelers. It was, it's wonderful to go to a game indoors. It's like going to the theater. People are dressed up. I'm used to Cleveland. It's fucking cold. People are drunk and pissed and angry. Colts fans aren't used to that, man. I mean, this is the first time they've really had kind of a shitty team, you know, and they're just watching them as a Browns fan. I'm just laughing. I'm like, it's okay, guys. I felt like a therapist at the Colts game. But, man, I got to tell you, I bring that up because your champion, Matt Ryan, I mean, it looked like he had a new lease on life. But, man, this past week, I'm telling you, yeah, I was uncomfy. I was very uncomfy. It just wasn't fun. He was running around. He looked like Baker Mayfield. He was scared back there. He was kind of jittery with his footwork, and then he just threw ducks, and it was just gross, man. Yeah, absolutely gross.
Yeah, dude, that first half, what do you have? 39 total yards? Like something like seriously. It was like he had 39 yards or something like that. And it's just, what are you doing? Like
it was all tight ends. The receivers he didn't throw a pass, I don't think, longer than 8 yards. It was really fucking bad. I have a feeling we're going to talk about it a little bit this week. Welcome to the show, everybody. We're getting down to crunch time. Weeks left of the regular season and then playoffs begin, man. How you doing in your leagues? I know how you're doing. I just want to hear you talk about it.
Oh, God. All right. I'll talk about it.
Yeah.
I'll start off with a little bit lesser of a league. So I'm fighting to get into the playoffs in one league. So right now I'm technically in, but I am fighting like hell. It's a 12-man league, and I am in sixth. So I'm fighting 6 teams go. In another league I'm in the 14-man double flex, which is a Iron Man of a league. So much fun. I'm doing okay. I'm fighting, man. That's at 8 teams go. Right now, you and me and Russ are all neck and neck, man. And so as of right now, as it stands, I believe I'm 5th overall, which is pretty cool. But feeling pretty good in the driver's seat. And then in the
real quick in that league, I have to shout some people out. Shout out to my brother Sean Hickey, 11-1.
Great team.
This is a 14-team double flex league, and these are all players. There are no cream puffs in this league. These are all very experienced guys. This is a tough league, man. And to be 11-1, I mean, wow, it's just impressive. And he's the high point man, so you can't say he's a fraud. And he's had by 60 points. And I know that because I am the number 2 seed behind him, 60 points behind him. So it's a tough battle, man. Russ Hickey has a great team. I think it's going to fade towards the end here, if I'm being honest, but he's got a good team. You've got a good, you're a game behind me, and you're right there in the mix for High Point Man in that league. Yeah, it's great, man. How about the Superflex? How you doing there?
I know
you can't wait to talk about it.
That's my baby league, man. I mean, I dominate every year. I mean, this
all
is
right. Let's not get out of control here,
right.
Frank.
You're right. I do have the highest record since the inception of the league, but you're right. You're the best winning record. But no, I'm number one in that league. I have one loss under my belt. Or two losses. I can't remember. I think it's two losses.
You've got 3 losses under your belt. Losses. I know that because I'm a game behind you in the number 2 spot. So let's go, baby. I want to see a Johnny and Sean Super Bowl in one league, and I want to see a Frankie and Johnny Super Bowl in the other league, man. That would be great. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Please follow us on social media on Twitter at Frankly Fantasy F, and on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook at Frankly Fantasy Football. Let's get into some news, baby.
The season 2,000 yards. The season doesn't expect absolutely lost. Flip out.
News and notes.
All right, Frankie, I just have the first thing on the news right here is talk about OBJ. So Odell Beckham Jr., it's interesting. It's not really news. It's just kind of a weird thing, but he was taken off of a plane for a medical emergency, and he refused. Apparently he was in and out of consciousness, and he refused to put his seatbelt on. They kicked him off the plane. All of that's just kind of funny. He probably pulled a Joe Rogan and took an edible before he got on the plane and just was high out of his mind or something. Who gives a shit? He's not on a team. He doesn't have a job. Doesn't matter. What I do want to talk about is OBJ needs to be on your roster. Do you agree with that?
Totally agree with that.
Yeah,
totally.
He needs to be on your roster. He's going to sign with a team. He's going to sign with a team that's going to be a contender. So it's going to be a good team, and it's going to be a team where he's going to be able to play. So he's going to be looking at, coming in as a number 2 somewhere. What are some of your thoughts? What have you been reading? Just put my thumb on the pulse of what's going on with OBJ. Where's he heading here, buddy?
A lot of what I'm reading is Dallas. And that is all over everything. It makes a lot of sense too. Jerry Jones has a knack for bringing on guys that may have been head cases in prior lives or whatever it may be. And he ends up doing very well with them in Dallas. So that from a social construct makes sense. And then the other part of this that makes sense is they have capital to bring him on. And in addition, for him to be able to plug and play alongside of CeeDee Lamb, I think right now Jerry Jones is kicking himself a bit of the contract that he signed to Michael Gallup. I think it was too rich of a contract for what we're seeing out of Michael Gallup. And so what I think that they're really missing, Michael Gallup is a good receiver. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they paid him receiver 1 money, and they're getting a receiver 3 out of Gallup right now. They need somebody that's going to be able to pair with CeeDee Lamb to really help take away that double coverage from CeeDee. So I think that if Dallas was that location for OBJ, I think not only would he do well, I think he would thrive, John, like big time in Dallas. I think the other team that makes sense is the Giants. And I say that not so much from the capital standpoint. What I mean by that is they paid a lot of money to their receivers. They're number 1 in receiver cap. So that sucks. But what does make a lot of sense is OBJ's been there before. I think the Brian Daboll type of offense with what OBJ could bring could only help that team. It would open up Saquon Barkley to a whole nother thing. OBJ, in my opinion, would be walking in as the number 1 receiver immediately, providing immediate fantasy value. And especially with Sterling Shepard hurt, Kenny Galladay's an absolute worthless waste. You have Richie James and Darius Slayton. They need somebody. I mean, right now, the Giants are in this thing, man. They are absolutely in this thing. They're 7-4 in the driver's seat of being in the playoffs. Potentially, if Dallas drops a few, overtaking the NFC, that second position in the NFC East. And so they are in a really, really good spot. So for me, man, those would be the 2 landing spots. There's been a few rumblings of a few other teams, but for me, those are the 2 that make the most sense. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think those are good landing spots for him. We'll obviously dig into this a little deeper once he does sign, which should be pretty soon, I would imagine. But get him on your bench is the bottom line right now. Make sure he's on your roster. I've got him on my bench in one of the leagues, and it's a dart throw. I don't know what to expect. I don't know how healthy he really is. He still has to pass physicals. But we'll keep everyone abreast of what's going on with the OBJ situation. All right, let's get to some more news here. We lost some guys this week, buddy. We lost some guys. Elijah Mitchell out for the rest of the season, 6 to 8 week injury with a sprained MCL. Really too bad. It's actually the other knee that he injured. He just got back a week or two ago from an injury on the other knee.
Man.
Now what this does is got a rookie running back, Jordan Mason. McCaffrey's McCaffrey. He does what he does. But there is room for another running back in this on this team and on this roster. Jordan Mason is an interesting guy. We can talk about him a little bit, I think, in waiver wires, but I think he's a guy that you should look at picking up because there are going to be some rushing attempts here, possibly even double-digit touches for another running back in this San Francisco 49er backfield. All right, let's go. Mooney is likely out for the season. It's almost definitely at this point. He's going to have ankle surgery, so Darnell Mooney will be gone. Could elevate Chase Claypool, so just keep that in mind and keep an eye on him. Allen Robinson out for the rest of the season, having foot surgery. Robinson, wide receiver for the Los Angeles Rams. At this point, Allen Robinson is just fantasy irrelevant. When it comes to the draft next year, I'm not even going to be looking at him, considering him. Okay, a couple of guys injured here that are day-to-day or week-to-week. Michael Carter, running back for the New York Jets, day-to-day with a low ankle sprain. Joe Mixon and Jamar Chase likely to return on Sunday for the Bengals. So that is really good news. Joe Mixon was out with a concussion. He should be back. Monitor his status, but it's looking pretty good. Josh Jacobs, running back for the Las Vegas Raiders. We're going to talk about him in a minute here in our fire section, as most of you know. But he's not going to be. Everybody needs to monitor this situation. He got banged up in the game, ended up leaving the game, came back, and still had that 86-yard walk-off touchdown at the end of the game. He was doing that while he was injured. But he's going to be limited or not practicing at all this week. So you're really going to have to pay attention to him. He's been playing fantastic, playing out of his mind. I think he's the number one running back in fantasy at this point after that last week. He's nursing a calf strain, so keep an eye on him. He should be good to go, but he's not going to practice all week, so don't be freaked out. Pay attention on Friday and Saturday, see what they say. Najee Harris, running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers, left the game on Monday night with an abdominal injury. I don't really have any other news of what that looks like or how serious it is. Maybe he just had to take a shit. I have no idea. We've seen that before where guys have left the game. But definitely keep an eye with Jaylen Warren still out with a hamstring. Anthony McFarland and Benny Snell are very interesting. If you need plug-and-play guys, especially with bye weeks coming into week 13 and 14, which, Jesus Christ, really a bye week in week 14? You might need these guys. So pay attention to what's happening there in that Pittsburgh backfield. Damian Harris ruled out already for Thursday night's game this week with a thigh injury. You know what that means, baby. Ramondre. Fire him up. He's a beautiful start. Melvin Gordon, he's looking to sign here. He's going to be signing with the Chiefs. He's on the practice squad. I think they will elevate him to the 53-man roster very quickly. What do you think this does? Talk a little bit. Do you think this has any relevance whatsoever with the Chiefs? You've got Isaiah Pacheco. You've got Jerick McKinnon. Do you see Melvin Gordon really having a role or being fantasy relevant?
I do. I don't think it's immediate. I do not think it's immediate, guys. I think this is a great example of a guy you stash for a playoff push in fantasy. We're about a couple weeks out, right? We're 2 weeks out from the first playoff week. He could be very interesting come week 15, week 16, week 17, when maybe the Chiefs are thinking, hey, they're actually thinking about their playoff push. Maybe they want to set aside Isaiah Pacheco or maybe, level set his expectations or his, I guess, what am I trying to say? The amount of workload that he's going to be doing alongside of Jerick McKinnon, especially if one of these guys go down from an injury, which McKinnon has already been banged up a bit from an injury in the past. And then obviously Isaiah Pacheco's done a very good job this year, but I really think that there is going to be some sort of fantasy value coming out of Melvin Gordon in the weeks to come. So I think he's a great stash player right now.
Yeah, if you've hopefully you didn't drop him. We told you to hold on to him just in case. If he's on the waiver wire, by all means, pick him up.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got him, hold him. We're looking at a schedule of week 15 and 16, right in the heart of the playoffs there. Houston and Seattle. Those are such juicy matchups for a running back. So this could be a guy, especially at Houston, he could win you your first week in the playoffs. So keep an eye on that. Aaron Rodgers has a rib injury, left the game. Jordan Love came in. Right now, it sounds like he's going to play. So just keep an eye on. I don't think it has that many fantasy implications. I don't think a lot of people are starting Rodgers right now. Maybe in a super flex, you'll have to keep an eye on that. But I don't think it really matters for Christian Watson, especially, who's really emerged. 7 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks. I mean, just absolutely absurd. Obviously, he's got a connection with Jordan Love, so I don't think it's going to affect the receivers too much there. Who else we had? Guys that you need to watch this week. There's just some guys that have been injured that might be coming back. Keep an eye on them. Justin Fields, Jamar Chase, Joe Mixon, like we talked about. Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson. Mostert missed last week with an injury. He should be good to go, but pay attention to him. He's got some really nice matchups coming up here. And Jeff Wilson left the game, but he ended up coming back. So pay attention there for that Miami Dolphins backfield. James Robinson, this is an interesting one, and I had to look things up just to know. And I was talking actually with my brother this morning about this. He had him. He calls me up. He goes, "What the fuck's going on with James Robinson?" He was a healthy scratch, running back for the New York Jets. He was a healthy scratch, and the reason why he wasn't there and on the roster is because he doesn't play special teams. They had Michael Carter Jr. as the starting running back, and was actually the rookie running back who got a lot of play there after Michael Carter got hurt, especially. But James Robinson doesn't play special teams, so therefore they needed the roster spots. They had Corey Davis come back and a few other guys. Don't freak out about it. Now that Michael Carter's day-to-day with a low ankle sprain, James Robinson is set to be in there. And the Jets have a very, very juicy schedule moving forward. And then like we talked about with Josh Jacobs, so let's make sure everything's good to go with him by the end of the week here. All right, Frankie, let's get into Frankie and Johnny's Song of Ice and Fire. I love how that's our opportunity to take a drink, take a breath, get reestablished here. You know, what's going on? All right, let's get to ice, man. A couple of these guys really hurt me, like this top guy right here, Alvin Kamara. Absolutely just killing me on my team right now. He's got such a juicy playoff schedule, which is why I grabbed him, but he's got a couple of tough games leading up to it. Alvin Kamara was 7 rushes for 13 yards. Jesus. 6 catches on 7 targets for 37 yards and 2 big fumbles in the game that killed your score. 2 points out of Alvin Kamara. Who else we got, Frankie?
John, we got George Kittle this week. He only had 4 targets after having a monster game last week. He had 4 targets, 3 receptions, 26 yards, which equates to 4 points for Kittle. Really, really tough week on ice, man.
He's been up and down, and you got to start him if you've got him, you know. Juju Smith-Schuster making a comeback here for the Chiefs. You know, I mean, it's just one of those things. Somebody is going to be on ice in that receiving core, and somebody's going to be on fire typically in that receiving core. This was not Juju's week. 3 for 3, 38 yards, 5 points. Who else we got, Frank?
John, I have to just call this guy out. He's just been so shitty all year, and he just continues to be on ice, frozen solid. I'm talking about Russell Wilson, John, again on ice. I swear to God, I thought he's going to figure it out. It's Russell Wilson. No, he's getting yelled at by defensive linemen, getting screamed at by other teammates. What the fuck? 19 for 35, 142 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 fumble, and 3 sacks. Guys, this is 6 points for Russell Wilson. Absolutely living in the frozen tundra at this point. Not just on ice, living in it.
Yeah, I don't want anybody on this offense other than Latavius Murray. That's it. Run the ball, play defense. That's all they can do. Yeah, Russell Wilson's been such a bust. Oh, my God. Tyler Boyd, 2 catches, 16 yards, 2 points. Alan Lazard, 2 catches, 24 yards, 3 points. Deebo Samuel, 3 catches, 43 yards, 5 points. All right, why don't you talk about this next guy here? He's going to have these weeks, man, if he doesn't get in the end zone.
Yeah, no kidding. We're talking about Christian McCaffrey, guys. He was 11 for 32, so he had 32 yards rushing, but he also usually shines in that passing game, right? Well, he did get 6 targets. He caught 4 of them, but it was only for 17 yards, which equates to 7 total points. That's so low for Christian McCaffrey. Unfortunately, not a great week. He's going to look to bounce back, especially with Elijah Mitchell being out.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to take 2 running backs here, and I'll let you do the 2 receivers here. Cam Akers, just constantly on ice, man. This whole offense is just, I think they're done. This whole Rams team is absolutely done. Aaron Donald is hurt now. They're just not going to play any of these guys and risk them for next year. Cam Akers, 8 for 37, 3 points. And Dameon Pierce, we talked about Dameon Pierce. Teams have figured this out. This team is not good, and they try to run the ball with Dameon Pierce because that's really all they've got at this point. But teams are hip to it, man. They're all over it. 5 for 8 yards, 3 catches for 8 yards, 3 points out of Dameon Pierce. Brutal.
Rough, man. And to add to that, John, with the Rams, when you were talking about Cam Akers, I'm hearing through the grapevine that Matt Stafford might be shutting down for the season.
Yeah, I think they're going to bench these guys. Why would you put him out there? He's got no receivers. Even if Cooper Kupp can come back at the end of the season,
no point.
They're not going to play these guys. They're
no
done.
way.
Yeah, it's just a lost season.
John, the other 2 guys on ice here, 2 receivers, we're looking at Drake London, right? So he had 4 targets, 2 receptions, 29 yards, 3 points. Then you got, this was interesting, Mike Evans. Very rarely do you see Mike Evans purely on ice, right? He might have had a shitty week, but purely on ice, especially when he has this type of stat line. 9 targets, 2 receptions for 31 yards, 4 points. Shout out to MJ Emerson, rookie cornerback for the Browns. Really, really did an excellent job. Sorry, guys, I had to do a little hometown plug there.
No, that was great. He really did. He was all over Evans, man. And not only that, he had 9 targets, but a lot of them were really bad targets.
Really bad targets.
Brady missed him big time, yeah. Well, you've got these guys in the season of Black Friday, like we just had, and how these fucking maniacs go to the store and go crazy. It just reminds me of, it's just chaos. You've got these guys on your team. You're right in the mix. You're trying to win every single game, trying to get to the playoffs. And it just feels like it's just goddamn chaos. These people are nuts, man.
Crazy.
I have never done that. I will never do that. I don't know why this is still a thing. You can buy shit right off your phone, man. This is not rocket science anymore. How about right in the beginning that turned that one lady into a crawler? It was like zombies. Shot her legs and she's just a zombie crawler on the ground, man. It's nuts.
John, that's how I feel like right before the trade deadline. Like, that's how my mind fucking feels. Like, all right, just like gotta, try to figure out where my next trade's coming from, who I'm targeting, like how this is going to work out. Like, that's a perfect example.
I had a trade deadline panic too, man. I was like, wait, no, there's a couple of guys I want. Can I get them?
Make something happen.
All right, let's get to fire here, man. We had the single best fantasy performance in like the past 7 years, I think it was. 300 total yards. It was absolutely bananas. Talk about it, Frankie. Pull him up there, man.
Johnny, we're talking about Josh Jacobs here. It was something of legends were made. So he amassed 303 yards from scrimmage, 2 scores on 39 touches. That's unbelievable. He finished with 229 yards rushing alone. Like, guys, this is so legendary of a performance. You know what this does? And like, talking like fantasy aside, Raiders did not pick up his 5th-year option which means that he is a unrestricted free agent heading into next season. What this performance just showed, John, is he put his money where his mouth is, and this dude is going to get paid. This dude's going to get paid, and it's going to be very, very fascinating where he goes. So Josh Jacobs, in a half PPR, you had 49 points. In full PPR, you went nuclear, man, and just so well done. Absolutely on fire. What a fun freaking player to watch. I'm sorry I'm passionate about it. I don't even have him on any of my fantasy teams. That's how fun he was.
I know. It was great, man. And I misspoke. In a half PPR, he is the number 2 running back in fantasy football. All right, next, this is my boy. He's one of my heroes this year. I've got him. I've got the stack. I love him this year. Jalen Hurts, quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. Doing his things, man. 153 yards passing, 2 passing touchdowns. What did he have rushing here? Oh, just 17 rushes for 157 yards, man. It's just absolutely beautiful. 33 points out of Jalen Hurts. Hey, is that White Vic that you're going to talk about next?
Oh, well, it might as well be, because he outplayed the old White Vic, and he is going to be the new White Vic. Who are we talking about? Mike Vic White, not Vic.
Mike motherfucking White.
This dude came to play, John. Absolutely unbelievable in a terrible, absolutely terrible environment to play in with the rain coming down, ball slippery, doesn't give a shit. He went out and slanged it, man. He threw for 405 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions for 31 fantasy points. Absolutely on fire. Well done, Mike White. And I'm going to say a hot take here. I don't think it's that hot. Zach Wilson, looks like you're going to be looking for another mother to fuck, buddy, because you are going to have some time on your hands with Mike White taking that over. Yeah,
I mean, the little fucking Mormon kid is just absolutely done, man. I'm sorry. He's done. Fun fact, I won a little bit of money. Thank you, Mike White. I had the DFS lineup on DraftKings. I had Mike White, Garrett Wilson stack.
What? That's so ballsy.
Thank you to everyone.
Wow.
Is that balls of steel, baby? That's how you win fucking money in DFS right there, baby. Had to do a little self-brag. All right, let's get to another guy on fire. This guy's just living in flames. He's always on fire. He's also on my team in one of my stacks. Josh Allen, Josh Stallion, quarterback for the Buffalo Bills. 253 yards passing, 2 passing touchdowns. 78 yards rushing and a rushing touchdown as well. 31 points out of Josh Allen. We got a lot of quarterbacks here. Touch on another one, man.
Oh, man, this guy's finally coming out of the slums. We're talking about Justin Herbert here. Justin Herbert is having back-to-back incredible weeks. This week, he had 274 yards passing. He also had 3 touchdowns to go along with that, which equates to 31 points as well. And guys, what we're starting to see from Justin Herbert is that now that his receivers are starting to get healthy, his tight end is back, and Austin Eckler continues to perform, Justin Herbert is coming back to life. Well done, good sir.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's going to make a nice run, I think, at the end of the season for you. All right, we've got a lot to get to in this episode. We're going to do a few different things, so I'm just going to run through a couple of these fire guys. Miles Sanders, great to see him, 30 points. Kyler Murray's back. 29 points. Kirk Cousins, 28 points. Derek Carr, 28 points. Trevor Lawrence, 26 points. A lot of quarterbacks, a lot of good quarterback play this past week. Justin Jefferson, 26 points. The Dolphins defense, 25 points.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. We knew that was going to happen, man. I mean, that was huge. That was definitely the defense to have last week. And my boy, Garrett Wilson, 25 points. Thanks for the DraftKings money there, brah. Well, Frankie, on Black Friday, you've got these guys and it just pumps you up, and you have this speech. This is the speech I gave to my teams this week so I can dominate.
1 second. Go for it. People of Target, brothers, sisters, hear me now. They're standing out there. Any moment now, those doors will be breached. Whatever comes through those gates, you will stand your ground with a smile on your face. They come here with bargains in their heads, and fire in their eyes. And we shall give those bargains to them. We will show them that we are not just the best store in this neighborhood, but the best store anywhere. Because we are more than just a store. This is a team. This is a family. This is Target!
I'm fucking ready to go.
You gotta love that, man. Is that Braveheart? Jesus Christ, let's go. I'm ready, man.
It's awesome.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. All right, let's get to looking ahead to this week, week 13. Now, I talked about earlier, for some reason, the fucking NFL, week 13 and 14 buys, man. I mean, you're just killing us in fantasy football here this year. Week 13, we've got two teams on bye, the Cardinals and the Panthers. Now, we're going to talk about it this week. We're going to talk about it next week as well, but you need to plan this week for the week 14 bye-pocalypse. It's the last week of the season, right before the playoffs, and this is going to make people freak out like those people on Black Friday at the store. Week 14, you've got the Falcons, the Bears, the Packers, the Colts, the Saints, and the Commanders all on bye. Absolutely brutal. This is the week you need to plan for that, though, on your waiver wire, because next week will be too late. Everybody's going to be fighting over whatever's left over. So pay attention to that. Get on your waivers this week and look at week 14 as well. All right, Frankie, what do you have for us on some waiver wire additions for this week that can help us out?
Yeah, guys, this week is where you need to be focusing on picking up guys for the playoffs. Do not wait until the week before the playoffs. It's just a tip that significantly helped me out in the past. And I know Johnny uses this as well. You want to stay a step ahead of everybody else, of the general pop, right? So when you're targeting this week, you're not thinking about week 13 necessarily. You are thinking about week 15, 16, and 17. So for that being said, I'm targeting a few different guys. 1/2 being the backups to Austin Eckler. And I say that I'm looking at Joshua Kelly and Isaiah Spiller. Do not spend a lot of money on these guys. They're going to be available and you're going to be able to get them for dirt cheap if you have the ability in your bench to get these guys. The reason being is because Austin Eckler is the number one back in fantasy football right now. He's unbelievable from a usage standpoint as well as a receiving standpoint, and he continues to be that guy. Joshua Kelly, when gotten the opportunity, has performed at a high level. That's why they were able to move on from Justin Jackson. In addition to that, they bring on Isaiah Spiller, who's a young guy who brings in a different flash. And so those two guys are very, very interesting. So again, you're positioning this as, in case Eckler gets hurt, you now have an absolutely dynamic individual. You know, you have a 50-50 shot between the two, but you have the ability to potentially snag one of these guys. So again, it's a complete stash play. It's an interesting play, but it's something to keep in mind. Very similar, John, for this next guy, Darrell Henderson. So Darrell Henderson, for whatever reason, just didn't work out with Sean McVay. I don't know what Sean McVay had against him. Yeah, he wasn't super great this year. Last year, he had almost 800 yards and 7 touchdowns. So I don't really know what the disconnect was. Now he's on the Jags. Okay, what do the Jags bring to the table? Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson has been known to use multiple backs. We saw this when ETN went down this week. ETN was cleared to come back. Doug Peterson said, absolutely not. So that's why they went with Jermichael Hasty as well as a few others. So guys, now that Darrell Henderson is going to be that number 2, he is a wonderful handcuff in this offense. If he is on the waivers, guys, this is absolutely a dude you need to be picking up 100%.
Like it.
So there's a few others that I want to get to. Another running back that I really want to call out is Zonovan Knight. Who is that? That is the undrafted rookie out of NC State, guys. He was phenomenal in college, finally gets his opportunity for the New York Jets. Okay, that's because of Michael Carter going down. What Johnny said was beautiful. James Robinson was not on there because he's not on special teams. So that's when Zonovan Knight got his opportunity. And boy, did he run with it. Guys, he had 14 carries for 69 yards. He also had 3 receptions on 3 targets for 34 yards. He had over 100 yards from scrimmage in his first game. So what this is telling me is that if Michael Carter Jr. continues to have a nagging injury, okay, number one, which they might end up taking very seriously, knowing that they're also pushing for the playoffs, so they might rest him a bit. He's going to have a lot of opportunity alongside that of James Robinson. So he is a wonderful, wonderful stash play for you on the waiver wire. Thinking about the playoffs, remember, we're thinking ahead for a guy that could really be a sneaky play. And these next three guys I'm going to list off, two of them probably have floated in between teams. One of them is going to be interesting. The two that I'm talking about that have floated in between teams, guys, Isaiah McKenzie with the Buffalo Bills and Zay Jones with the Jags. I say they probably have floated. What I mean by that is they probably were on one of the fantasy rosters and then they were dropped, right? They just kind of recycled multiple times. Now's the time to get these guys. And I'll tell you why. With Isaiah McKenzie, he's finally playing as the primary slot over that of Khalil Shakir, who's that rookie out of Boise State. When he was finally able to take that, John, and for those listening, he was able to play over 70% snap share. That was up from 40%, which was his highest previous to that. Okay, he also ran 40 routes this past week, which was third on the team. And to put it in perspective, what that means, Diggs had 47. So it's not like it was this massive discrepancy here. So this is telling me if Isaiah McKenzie continues playing in this primary slot type of role, he is absolutely fantasy relevant, especially with Josh Allen at the helm. Now, looking at Zay Jones, guys, this gets interesting. He's had 4 games with 10 or more targets and 2 other games with 8 or more targets. This stat line is nuts. The last 2 games, he's had 24 targets, 19 receptions, and 213 yards in the last 2 games. Guys, he is clear-cut number 2 receiver behind Christian Kirk. Trevor Lawrence totally trusts him. And what we're starting to see out of Trevor Lawrence is that confidence that Doug Peterson is breathing into this team. It's really starting to show in some of these secondary receivers. So for me, I'm totally looking to pick up these 2 receivers, guys, on that waiver. And the last guy I want to touch on, and it's totally a flyer, is Sky Moore. He has now had back-to-back weeks of 5 receptions on 6 targets. Let me repeat that. He's had back-to-back weeks of 5 receptions on 6 targets. That's second behind Travis Kelce. Okay? So he could be, I'm not saying he's going to be the guy that's going to pop off. What I'm saying is what Johnny and I have been saying for a long time. You want a piece of that Chiefs offense. You're not sure who's going to pop off, but he could maybe be a guy down the stretch here that's going to be interesting.
I like that a lot, man. Absolutely. And he's a rookie, correct?
He's a rookie.
Sky Moore?
Rookie out of Western Michigan, yeah.
Yeah, and we've seen and we've talked about many times down the stretch here is where rookies can really come into play, especially on a team. You're getting 6 targets back-to-back weeks that are Patrick Mahomes targets. Yeah, I want a piece of that. Absolutely. We talked about Odell Beckham Jr. already. Pick him up if he's available. 2 other guys I'd like to mention, Zamir White, running back for the Las Vegas Raiders, just in case Josh Jacobs can't go this week. Definitely worth a roster spot. And the other guy is Jordan Mason, rookie running back for the San Francisco 49ers. With Elijah Mitchell out and with the usage that they give McCaffrey, they don't want to give him the full load. They want to keep him to a kind of a limited, more efficient work use. So keep an eye on Jordan Mason. He could be interesting. All right, man. Let's get to our hit it's and quit it's.
I want you to hit it. Hit it and quit it. I want you to.
All right, man. I got to tell you, we've been really nailing these recently. We've been, and these aren't obvious choices either for guys to play.
No.
We try to get into that, middle tier of players here rather than the obvious studs. Last week's hit it's, Frankie, you had Geno Smith with 21 points and Jeff Wilson with 12 points. He'd have had a lot more, but he left with the injury and came back. I had James Conner with 20 points and DK Metcalf with 15 points. My boy. Gotta love it, man. All right, Frankie, who is your first hit it this week for week 13?
John, I'm going with Chris Godwin as my first hit it for week 13. Guys, what we're seeing is Chris Godwin of the old. He's coming back. He's coming back, baby. Where he had 13 targets. Holy shit. 13 targets, he had 12 receptions, 110 yards, and a touchdown. We've talked about it. He's now scoring touchdowns with it, which equates to 24 points. He is now continuing to be that go-to receiver for Tom Brady. He's that slot guy that he's always felt good with, the Wes Welkers, the Julian Edelmans, the Chris Godwins of the world, and he continues to be this guy. I really think that Chris Godwin this week playing against that Saints defense with Marshawn Lattimore banged up and a few others, I think, and it being a massive rivalry game and huge playoff implications in a very down division when that NFC South. This is going to be very interesting and a great opportunity for Chris Godwin to continue his big play. So I expect big things out of Chris Godwin this week.
Yeah, we talked about Chris Godwin. I mean, he was one of our biggest trade for candidates. We saw the targets. He wasn't scoring any touchdowns, and we knew you get those kind of targets from Tom Brady targets, those touchdowns will come. He's gonna center back into the mean. And sure as shit, it absolutely did. All right, let's get to my first hit it here. It's kind of a homer pick, man, but you know what? I gotta know. I gotta see it, and I have a good feeling. I'm talking about Amari Cooper, wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns. Okay, this is the week at Houston. We get our boy back, Captain Jerky. We get Deshaun Watson back. We get to see what he's all about. And I know he hasn't played football in feels like 2 years, but this is the perfect matchup for this because Nick Chubb's going to run for 200 yards. He's got to be the start of the week in all formats. Start Nick Chubb and enjoy it. He's going to run like a motherfucker on this team. But I think what that's going to do, it's going to take the pressure off of Deshaun Watson. He's not going to have to do a lot, but I think what he does do can be really efficient. And I think Amari Cooper, he's just been fantastic this year, especially these past 5 games. And the schedule they have coming up is absolutely beautiful as well. So very, very confident about Amari Cooper this week. Bring him on, baby.
Love it, John. And you know what's crazy with Amari Cooper? Don't you find it fascinating? I just feel like he's one of the guys that's just not talked about a lot in fantasy. And he's the number 8 receiver. Like, it's just so crazy to me. But yeah, it's great pick, man. For my second one, John, I'm going to go Keenan Allen here. And this is a bit risky, especially with some of the injuries and things like that going on. But you're starting to see Justin Herbert get back with that Keenan Allen connection. He had 7 targets last week, 5 receptions, 49 yards and a touchdown, which equates to 13 points. And this week, guys, they're playing against Vegas, which Vegas defense is not very good. It's a big time rivalry within the divisions. Vegas is still technically fighting for their life from a playoff hunt perspective. I mean, they need a lot to happen, but technically it's still possible. But I think this is going to be a shootout. I really do. I think this is going to be a very high scoring type of game. It usually is between these two teams. And I think with Mike Williams still banged up and with Keenan Allen now, cemented as that true number 1 again, I think it's going to be Keenan Allen's game. I think him and Eckler are going to have big games. So I really like Keenan Allen this week.
Love it, man. I'm going with Zeke. I'm going with Zeke. And you know what? I've talked shit about Zeke all season long, but I don't hold on to hatred. I don't hold grudges. I don't know. What do they call that in German? Schadenfreude? Schadenfreude, where you take pleasure in other people's pain. I don't do that. Okay. So Zeke, I'm looking at Firemouth. Zeke, I'm looking at your matchup here, buddy. You're playing the Colts at home. Listen, I'm wearing the jersey. I just went to the game. I've watched what teams are doing. I saw what the Steelers were able to do on the ground against this team. Zeke is the goal line guy. For whatever reason, they absolutely love Zeke, no matter how well Tony Pollard's playing. Zeke gets in the end zone. Johnny's guarantee, lock of the week. Zeke scores a touchdown against the Colts. They're just kind of bleeding out on defense. I got to see it firsthand, and a lot of goal line opportunities for the shitty Pittsburgh Steelers. This Dallas team is going to roll these guys, man. It's going to get brutal. All right, let's get Zeke off the screen here. See if I can do that. Beautiful. All right, Frankie, let's get to our quit-its now. Who are you quitting? Well, first of all, let's look at who we quit last week. We did pretty good with this as well. Brandon Cooks was your quit with 9 points, and Cordero Patterson with 9 points as well. My quits were Deontay Foreman with 12 points and Deontay Johnson with 7 points. So they were just kind of ho-hum. Who are we quitting this week, Frankie?
John, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm actually going to quit Leonard Fournette. And it's a bit risky to say that because obviously he hasn't been playing and he has been able to get healthier. And it looks like that he was trying to play last week, but the team told him, just rest. So it looks like he's going to be a go for this week. But the thing about the Saints, as much as I just talked about the Saints passing attack passing defense, that hasn't been super great, especially with Lattimore and those out. They actually have a pretty damn good rush defense. And so this makes me nervous, especially when you see Rachaad White perform over 100 scrimmage yards. He just looks so explosive. He's just smooth when he runs, and he's great pass catcher. That's what makes me nervous for Leonard Fournette. So not only about the Saints rushing defense, Fournette, I think, is going to actually lose real time to Rachaad White. I don't know if it's going to be a true 50-50, if it's going to be more 60-40 Fournette. But what I think is going to really hinder his or cap his ceiling is going to be that passing and that receiving work that he used to get that I think now could shift to that of Rachaad White. So for me, I'm quitting Leonard Fournette this week.
I've quit Leonard Fournette weeks ago. But here's something to consider, though. If I were in charge of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I wouldn't even play Leonard Fournette until the playoffs. I'd let him sit for a little while and get healthy, and then you get playoff Lenny like you always get. You've got a very good rookie running back. Let him take some of the load here, take it off of Fournette. So I agree with you. I think he's going to have a tough game against the Saints. My first quit is Michael Pittman Jr., and I'm sorry. My friend Libby, who I went to the Colts game with, she said, God, please don't shit on the Colts again, especially after being there. I'm sorry. I got to see it with my own eyes. It was fucking pathetic, man. I'm quitting Michael Pittman Jr., MPJ. He's got to go this week. At Dallas, no way. I just saw Matt Ryan. He couldn't throw a pass further than 8 yards, and it was disgusting. It's just going to kill Michael Pittman Jr. He might get a cheap touchdown in here or there, but I do not expect big things. This Dallas defense is going to destroy this Colts offense, man. It's going to be brutal. All right, who else you got?
John, I'm quitting Jeff Wilson as my second. And the strictly being is because, and I know this is a bit tough, they're playing San Francisco. Guys, San Fran's defensive front, you do not play. We just saw who you're going to take, Kamara, Jeff Wilson, right? You're going to take Kamara 100 times out of 100 times. And you saw what San Francisco did to Kamara. We've seen what San Francisco has done to top-notch running backs this year. Jeff Wilson, he's good. He's a good back. He's nowhere near elite in that elite tier. And so this is a nightmare matchup for him. On top of it, Mostert is coming back. And on top of that, Jeff Wilson was banged up last week. So this, to me, is just not the week strictly because of matchup for Jeff Wilson. So I'm quitting him this week.
You know what I like about you, Frankie, and this is what we've criticized some other guys in our league. You don't have any biases. You're looking strictly at the matchup and the player. Jeff Wilson was your start. He was your hit it last week. And then this week, he's your quit it. So you can't just go all in on a guy. You have to look at what's going on, what the situation is. It's all situational in fantasy football. So that's great, man. Good work. I love that. My last quit it here is going to be Gus Edwards. The Gus bus is going to be stalling. They're playing Denver. Denver's defense is no joke at all. It's very, very difficult to run on the Denver offense or Denver defense. The running game for the Ravens is difficult to start anyway, even in juicy matchups. This is not the one, so you just have to sit Gus Edwards. All right, man, let's do some flex appeal. I love this. Oh, man. I need to see you in the club, and just feeling it, baby. Bill. All right, last week, flex appeals. Frankie had Jacoby Myers with 8 points and Antonio Gibson with 7 points. I had Christian Kirk with 6 points and Brian Robinson, there he is, 21 points. That's a beautiful flex for you. All right, Frank, who are you going with this week?
Yeah, man. So my first flex appeal, guys, is going to be Jamal Williams. So the reason being is because he's playing against the Jags. So we're starting to see DeAndre Swift come back into the fold a little bit more. He's getting more and more touches every single week. And so that's why I'm not super insanely crazy about Jamal Williams. I'm really tempering my expectations. Last week, guys, he had 18 carries for 66 yards and a touchdown. However, he did lose a fumble, which is kind of crazy because before this year, he's never lost a fumble. Now he's lost 2. And so he had 10 points, which is great. But I love this matchup. That's why I have him as my flex appeal. We saw what Gus Bus did against the Jags. He was able to put up a touchdown and over 50 yards rushing. So I like that. So from a flex side of things, I think you can feel really confident in the workload Jamal Williams will be getting against the Jags.
I love it. Can't go wrong there. I'm going with the guy that won me some money this week, man. Garrett Wilson, wide receiver for the Jets. Jets. They're at Minnesota. Now, we've seen the chemistry that he's got with Mike White right now, and it's so nice to be able to see the talent actually unleashed. They're getting him the ball in space. And let me tell you something, man. This guy is, like you used to say in every episode, he's electric, baby. Get him the ball in space and see what he can do. You know what he can do? It's called a 54-yard touchdown. I mean, that's just what he's doing. Yeah, I'm starting him, fire him up at Minnesota. It's a very leaky secondary, and I'm just going to keep riding the flames with Garrett Wilson right now, man.
Love it. Love that. John, for my second, I'm going way out on a ledge here. The guy that's been on ice for 2 weeks, absolute shitbag performer. Team is god-awful, but the matchup is juicy. I'm going with Dameon Pierce versus Cleveland. Guys, again, he's been absolutely atrocious. It isn't even remotely close. He's borderline, you're ready to snap your phone in half if you've had him, which I've had him. The thing with this week is this matchup is so good. We're seeing multiple teams now. Almost every team the Browns have played against, they've had over 100 yards rushing or a 100-yard rusher. And so, or 100 yards from scrimmage from that running back. So perfect example last week with Rashad White, guys, right? Rookie, he had over 60 yards rushing, over 40 yards receiving, or almost 40 yards receiving, guys. He had over 100 yards from scrimmage, right? I see something very similar to that. And Dameon Pierce, in my opinion, is even a better back than that of Rashad White. So understanding that Houston has nothing else other than Pierce at this point in time, I don't think it matters. That's how bad this Browns running defense actually is. So I'm locking in Dameon Pierce on a risky play as my flex appeal number 2.
Okay. Well, you touched on it with your love of Keenan Allen this week. Well, I'm going to go to the other side of that, the field there. I think you can plug in Josh Palmer and DeAndre Carter. Both are wide receivers for the Los Angeles Chargers. I think you could plug either one of those in. I like Palmer a lot more, but if you've got DeAndre Carter, I think you can plug him in if you need him to cover for a bye week, especially. Mike Williams is looking like he's going to be out. These two guys have been eating. Josh Palmer, his targets, 12 targets, 10 targets, 8 targets, 10 targets, 7 targets. DeAndre Carter last week had 10 targets. So when you're getting those targets from Justin Herbert, he's really playing out of his mind right now, and this team is really coming together. So I just love the target share, just how the play from Justin Herbert. And let's throw some icing on the cake there. They're playing the Raiders, the leakiest of leaky defenses. It's like that drip dick you get, and you have to go, oh man, I got to go to the doctor. This is not normal. That's the Las Vegas Raiders defense, man. They need some salves and some ointments or a shot of penicillin or something.
Z-Pack.
A little Z-Pack to go with that, yeah. But no, start Josh Palmer or DeAndre Carter. I think they're both beautiful starts this week. All right, man, let's get into something a little different here. This is this week and next week, we're going to talk about some different positions that have some favorable playoff schedules. So these are guys that you either want to target or you want to pick up off the waivers or fire them up and get them ready to go. So we're going to talk about some of these guys. But first, this segment is brought to you by our sponsor, CalSPRA Employee Recruitment Services. Tired of staffing companies charging high hourly rates to recruit subpar employees for your business? CalSPRA Employee Recruitment Services sets you up with a program that sustains a constant flow of new recruits coming to your door. How do they do it? It's simple. They had to. CalSPRA has owned a manufacturing business since 1989, and when their employee crisis hit, they came up with a system with proven results. No hourly fees for the employees they bring to your business, just one flat fee to get you real results. For more information, call now at 330-584-7759. Use the promo code Frankie and Johnny, and get a free consultation for your business. All right, Frankie, so let's look at some of these guys. Let's get into running backs and receivers this week. And then next week, we'll start looking at quarterbacks and defenses, especially if you're streaming. Those quarterbacks and defenses are very important. Get a few weeks ahead, look at the schedules, drop some of these guys. You don't need to hold on to a bunch of guys. You can cut some players now. You know you're not going to play some of these guys. Get them off your bench. Make room for a backup quarterback. If you're streaming, look at a great schedule. Or maybe a backup running back here, or a defense. You've got a good defense for week 13 and 14. Look at 15, 16. Have those defenses sitting on your bench. You've got to get a few weeks ahead. Let's look at some teams that have some favorable schedules here, Frankie. Why don't you talk to me about a few of these teams and a few of the guys here?
Yeah, John. So a few of these guys. So I'm going to start off with the running backs here. So I'm going to do first two of them to start. So I'm looking at the Jets right now, guys. So from the playoff schedule itself, it's looking at Detroit, Jacksonville, and then Seattle. So for me, looking at the running backs, if Michael Carter Jr. if he's able to play and he's able to fight through, I love that schedule for him. I think it's very, very, very good, very favorable. Keep in line with that of James Robinson as well. Right. So if he ends up coming back into the fold, especially a true runner, I'm looking at especially Detroit and Jacksonville, guys. I mean, that's a smash play. That is exactly what you are looking for. And then don't forget Zonovan Knight. If you're able to pick him up as well, he could be that interesting stash play depending on what happens with James Robinson. Shit, he might even be the backup to James Robinson if Michael Carter can't get out there. So I love the Jets from a running back perspective, especially. That playoff schedule. John, the other is the Saints here with Alvin Kamara. Yes, he has been dog shit the last 2 weeks, but it's still Alvin Kamara, right? So we're looking at Atlanta, Cleveland, and then Philly. And so the reason, Atlanta and Cleveland, guys, that's right.
Smash plays
you
for
might
a
as well
running
just
back.
have a fillet on a plate. You know what I mean?
It's beautiful.
And then Philly's interesting as well because, guys, what we've seen from running backs against Philly is that their receiving work has been decent. And that's usually because these teams are trying to keep up with that of the Eagles. And so I think that, again, Alvin Kamara being Alvin Kamara, he's going to come back to earth here and start playing really well. And not only because of that playoff schedule is so nice, it's because the team as a whole is fighting to get into the playoffs as well. I believe they're a half a game back from that of the Bucks. So they're right in the mix of it. So this is really two interesting teams, John, and from a running back perspective, that could be great.
Absolutely. Now, this next team, the Chiefs, I mean, it's almost like the rich just keep getting richer. They've got a really nice schedule going into the playoffs here in the Super Bowl. They've got Houston, Seattle, and Denver. Now, the Chiefs defense also needs to be owned. Make sure you've got them set up, especially for that Super Bowl game against Denver.
God.
You've got Russell fucking Wilson. It's just going to be beautiful for you if you've got that defense. But Isaiah Pacheco and Jerick McKinnon are very interesting people here. Houston, Seattle, those are great matchups for running backs. So, yeah, Isaiah Pacheco, again, a rookie, comes in halfway through the season, takes the job, and can win you your league. Isaiah Pacheco is really set up to be able to do that for you. Who else you like here, Frankie, with some running back favorable schedules?
Yeah, John, I'm going to lump in another two here. I like Gus Edwards from the Ravens. We're looking at Cleveland, Atlanta, and Pittsburgh. I think that those are all great plays. If Gus Edwards can stay healthy, we already saw what he did against Cleveland. The first time he came back, he really looked good, scored, and had over 60 yards rushing. Atlanta continues to be that team that gets pounded week after week by opposing running backs. And Pittsburgh, again, that's going to be a fun game to watch. The Ratbirds and the Steelers. And then you got the Lions, right? So thinking about the Lions schedule here, they're playing the Jets, Carolina, and Chicago. So you have DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams. Guys, I think that you have the possibility, depending on what happens with the Lions here, of potentially playing both of these guys, right? If DeAndre Swift continues to increase that workload and continues to see increased touches, he absolutely could be a flex play. And Jamal Williams, I mean, at this point, if you're not playing him, I just don't know if you're playing fantasy football. So Yeah, I really love their playoff schedules.
All right, I'm going to run through a couple of these. Derek King Henry's got a really nice schedule. The Chargers, Houston, ends on Dallas, which is going to be tough, but it's Derek Henry. Najee Harris with the Steelers, assuming he gets healthy. I would also look at stashing some of those backups as well. Have Jalen Warren on your bench. It's a hamstring. He could be back and fully functional by then. Carolina, Benny Snell, yeah, Anthony McFarland. I would put these guys on and see what happens over the next few weeks because their schedule is nice. Carolina, Vegas, and Baltimore. So that's beautiful. The Broncos, we make fun of them, but, they've got a decent schedule coming up as well in the playoffs, only for Latavius Murray. That's really all I would be interested in using for that. For running backs here, Arizona, the Rams, and Kansas City. What about a couple of other teams here, bud?
Yeah, John, I'm looking at the Bucks for the fantasy playoff push here with Leonard Fournette and Rachaad White. We're looking at Cincinnati, Arizona, and Carolina. I think that's a pretty favorable schedule as well. So again, be monitoring Lenny, but I really like Rachaad White.
Yeah, and right here could be league winning for you, man. 49ers play Seattle, Washington, and Las Vegas. I mean, wow. If you've got 49ers on your team, really enjoy that. If you make it to the Super Bowl, you're playing that little leaky dick there. So that's going to be nice. Christian McCaffrey, Jordan Mason, those are two running backs. Again, Jordan Mason should be on your team. These guys could really help you out here in the playoffs. All right, let's look at a couple of wide receiver matchups here. Couple of teams that have some juicy matchups for wide receivers. And I know this one's risky, and I know everybody's going to go, what? I traded for this guy for this exact reason because I knew I was playoff bound and I wanted to get a cheap piece that I could plug in a double flex league. The Texans have a favorable schedule, believe it or not, for wide receivers specifically. They're going to be in negative game scripts in all of these games, which means they're going to have to throw the ball to these two receivers, Brandon Cooks, Nico Collins, specifically Brandon Cooks. I like him a lot. They play Kansas City, Tennessee, and they end on Jacksonville for your Super Bowl. So I think those guys would really be able to help you out in garbage time, especially. All right, why don't you take the next one here, buddy?
Oh, I would gladly take the next one here. We're looking at the Browns, guys. Browns for receivers. They have a very, very nice playoff schedule here. We're looking at Baltimore, New Orleans, and Washington. So what does that mean for Amari Cooper and DPJ? Guys, fire them up. With Watson coming back. This is a really, really nice schedule, especially since they are definitely still in the playoff hunt. It's not a high percentage, but these guys are going to need to win. They're going to need to air it out. So I really like that playoff schedule.
Yeah, and the Cowboys as well. The Cowboys have a nice schedule. Jacksonville, Philly, Tennessee. Ending on Tennessee with a receiver is a beautiful thing. So CeeDee Lamb is going to be great. And then you're going to have to keep an eye on Michael Gallup or OBJ, depending on what happens there. But that could be very interesting. But the wide receivers for the Cowboys should have a nice run in the playoffs as well.
John, I also really like the Packers. So especially from the receiving standpoint, I know Aaron Rodgers is banged up, guys. But what the Packers are looking at is the Rams, Miami, and Minnesota. What this means is they need to throw the ball to keep up. They need to score touchdowns. They are not going to be able just to run the ball with A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. They have to keep hot. So I could really see Christian Watson and potentially that of Allen Lazard being big down the stretch.
All right, I'm going to end it here with two guys, Frankie. OH.
I.O.
These two rookies drafted in the NFL this year, both were wide receivers for Ohio State Buckeyes this past year or last year. Saints, Chris Olave, just really such an important piece on that offense. He's really, really playing well. Ends in your playoffs with Atlanta, Cleveland, and Philly. So he's going to be highly targeted and very important to that team. Really nice schedule there. And Garrett Wilson for the Jets, Detroit, Jacksonville, and Seattle.
That's beautiful.
You know what? Assuming they've got Mike White and Mike White continues playing well, he doesn't have to score 30 points like he did. But if he can play decent and play well with this matchup, Garrett Wilson could be the Amon-Ra St. out of this year. The rookie that took a long time to get his shit together. But once he did, he just blew up, and I think he can really help you win some fantasy leagues this year. All right, man, we're almost done here. There's so much to get to, Let's end it up with crossing the streams.
will cross the streams.
Excuse me, Egon. You said crossing the streams was bad.
Cross the streams.
All right, Frankie, who are we streaming this week with quarterback, tight end, and defense? How'd you do last week, first of all?
I'll tell you what, last week was a good week. Last week was a good week. We had Tannehill, who got 18 points. We had Freiermuth with 5 points, and we had the Jets D with 13. So overall, it was a good week. This week, though, I'm feeling even better. And because I feel like it's not as risky, and I feel like there's some good streaming options. So for those of you who are looking ahead a bit, and maybe focused a little bit more on this week than maybe the playoff push, I really like, from a quarterback perspective, Jared Goff. Jared Goff is playing the Jags. He had a huge bounce back week against a really tough Buffalo Bills team. He had 26 points against Buffalo. And trust me, that's not even close to being as tough as, the Bills are much tougher than that of the Jags. And so I really think this is a great opportunity for Jared Goff to continue to build, see him having a huge week. From a tight end perspective, guys, I'm going to go Foster Moreau versus the Chargers. We have talked a lot about this game. John's, with Darren Waller being out, Foster Moreau has really stepped in and been a guy that Derek Carr can really rely on. So I think, again, with this being a high scoring type of game, Foster Moreau could get some red zone targets for sure, or maybe even get you, that 8, 9, 10 point mark. Maybe it's a 4 receptions, 50, 8 yards, something like that, 60 yards. That would be great out of especially a streaming tight end. So I really, really like his opportunity this week. And from a defensive side, this is the week that you feel comfortable starting them after all the shit that they put us through. Browns defense, fire them up against the Houston shitbags that we're going to be playing against in Texas. Okay. So trust me when I say it, Browns defense.
I love it, man. I love it. It's risky. I would push the button and start him and go, oh God, am I really doing this? All right, let's do it. All right, Frankie, anything else? I think we got it all. That was a lot to fit into one episode here. And we got it just about to an hour. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. Please follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube at Frankly Fantasy Football, and Twitter at Frankly Fantasy F. I'm not going to give you our LinkedIn handle this time, Frankie. Not going to do it.
Thank God.
I know. Special thanks to Anthony Sistone for the music that he gives us for the podcast, Liam Hickey for helping us produce and edit, and Jesse Kelsey and our sponsor, CalSpra Employee Recruitment Services. Frankie, good luck to you, man, and good luck planning for the Bipocalypse in week 14. Get on it now, guys. I'm telling you, use this entire week and every night waivers run. Plan for week 14 now because it will bite you in the ass. All right, everyone, have a great week. Frankie, I love you so much, brother. Any parting words, my friend?
Good luck this week, guys. John, I won't take your thunder.
Oh, thank you. May the fantasy gods smile upon you.